Hello, my name is José Crespo de Carvalho. I'm here in ISCTE Executive Education. This body of knowledge, or body of our ISCTE, the main university, is the executive education body that runs programs like MBAs, executive masters, programs like postgraduate programs, short duration programs, specializations, things like that. And we also offer programs specifically designed for companies, for companies, and tailor-made, an area that we call corporate programs. So we have a lot of offers, different offers, as you know, in these domains of management and technology, or technology and management. Today we have an invited professor coming from outside Portugal that will have a talk and will present the future, somehow the future of work. I don't know if it is the future of work, because we always call future of work, but workers, we don't use anymore workers or employees. I don't know if they are employees or workers, still workers. There are a lot of things here that I don't know really, because I call them people, our people. Is it supposed to call them our workers? I don't know, our employees. We don't know. There is always a new language behind all this, and not only the language, but the concepts and the changing of everything that is happening is very deep. So I invite you to listen to my colleague, Peter Bradstatter, that is with us to present something about the future of work. And I hope you like his presentation. Thank you for coming, Peter, and you are very welcome in this house. So please, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
My pleasure to be here. So, good evening, everyone. Good evening to the students which are here in the classroom and also to all the people which are online. As already mentioned, my name is Peter Brandstetter. Just call me Peter, that's easier. And I have been working with the University of Applied Sciences of Upper Austria for almost 20 years now. And I would like to give you a little bit of an idea and some insights about what the future of employees, work, or people, we don't know exactly, will be. And this is basically based on changes and challenges that are due to a pretty massive transformation that we are expecting due to new work requirements. I think you all experienced the changes during the COVID pandemic when we had to go online from one day to the other one. This was a short-term thing that happened, but I think there is a couple of other things which will be coming up and which all could be very interesting. Let me do just for 3 minutes the sales show of our institution. I'm from the University of Applied Sciences of Upper Austria. Okay, does it? No, it doesn't. Yeah, okay, yeah. Here you find a video clip and you find in the material also some other information. Just to give you a quick overview, we are a small school in the field of applied sciences and we have basically 4 different campuses. One is for informatics, communication and media. We always call it the IT campus where all our IT specialists tend to be educated. We have a campus in Linz, which is the capital of Upper Austria, which is about medical engineering and applied social sciences. We have a campus in Wales about engineering. I'm always happy if nobody asks me about engineering because I'm a businessman. I come from the business faculty, business and management faculty at the campus in Steyr. I'm not sure how well you know Austria. I had a couple of discussions today already and everybody was in Austria already. Most people have been in Vienna and Salzburg. Right between Vienna and Salzburg there is this Upper Austria, which is a very industrial region, and this is where we are located, which is good for students because they get into contact with a lot of businesses. As an applied institution we tend to work very closely together with the companies. And in addition, I have to say that it's also quite economical to live in Upper Austria because it's not a major tourist site, so it's a bit cheaper to live there as well. Okay, this was the sales pitch. Everything else can be found on the internet. We just skipped that. This is all the programs. We run a lot of programs actually in English and as well in German, obviously. We have a couple of interdisciplinary centers of excellence. One is about the automotive mobility, one is about the field of logistics. Austria is in Central Europe a logistics hub, so therefore this is important, but also other topics such as smart production and medical engineering are important areas. A few words about myself at the beginning. I am from a business background. I have been in consulting for quite many years. And then I joined the institution. I'm head of a department that's called Leadership and Social Skills, which is an important topic in our institution because we think that social skills are one of the key competencies regardless of all the IT skills. People also need to have certain social skills like bargaining and other things. And I'm teaching in several fields like leadership, organizational development, and human resources management. And yeah, I have a pretty long industrial background, and not to mention my age, I'm more than 15 years at the institution. What I will try to do today is to give a couple of predictions. That's a dangerous topic, I know that. Welcome. No, this is perfect. But I would like to quote someone who is much more famous than me at the very beginning. Bill Gates once made a quote, if your business is not in the internet, then your business will be out of business. That's something that basically everybody knows. But there was another quote by him in 1993, the internet is just a hype. I think he changed his mind a little bit. So I take the freedom of also changing my mind eventually in a couple of years. But I would like to give you some ideas about what the future of work as a tendency might be. So predictions are basically dangerous. And why do I do that? And I do that in several places all over in Europe at the moment. To be honest, because I've reached an age where I am not running a serious risk by making predictions, because I'm talking about what will be happening in 10 or 15 years. In 10 or 15 years, it doesn't matter to me anymore because I will be on retirement. So if you have any complaints, you have to see me in my nice summer place in Finland. Yeah, okay. When I talk to universities in the UK or in the US, mostly online, I always have to give a trigger warning. This is popular nowadays. And so this is the official trigger warning at the beginning, because some of these predictions may not fit into your personal expectations. And some things may be not so pleasing for you. Yeah, but that's the way it is. So if you want to hear only the good news, this might be the wrong place. I strongly believe that everything is good, but things are changing dramatically. I think, generally speaking, we have to forget about these typical 9-to-5 working jobs. We were used for many, many years to have an 8-hour workday, and we worked 5 days a week, and those who have been in a management function actually didn't work 40 hours a week. They rather work 50, 60, whatever hours, and sometimes they cannot even separate the two things anymore. Digital is remaking the workforce, and those companies which consider the digital opportunities in a reasonable way are definitely the ones which are the successful ones in the future. Current trends are basically two. The first one is that we all talk about remote and home office. The difference that we have in the German-speaking countries is home office means you sit at home and you do your work. Remote means you can do the job wherever you want on this planet, including all the facts that you're working at midnight and have a conference or whatever, but you can do that. My daughter is an IT expert. She is in software engineering. Currently, she is in Vienna, but in 2 weeks again, she will be in Bali. I never know when to call her because she's always, it's always the wrong time because she's always traveling. So this remote thing came with COVID. I'm still surprised to which extent we were capable to cope with that situation within days. I even wouldn't want to imagine. I look at Professor Crespo because you may have an idea about that. 10 or 15 years ago, we would have been out of business basically because of not having the necessary infrastructure. Nowadays we have that. And we have this generation Z coming up where there's all kinds of rumors and discussions. What are the value system components of this generation? These are the current trends. If you don't mind, let me say a few words about what's currently going on, and then we may switch to what are the so-called mega trends and what is coming up. And after that, I would like to give you my conclusions, which are something that we could discuss afterwards if you want. I would be happy, and I'm very open for all kinds of remarks. Well, the discussion about remote and home office, let me quote a study that we just lately did in Austria. Not because it's an Austrian study, but we did it ourselves, and I think it's not much different in all other European countries. We asked in this study to which extent do people want to utilize the possibilities of home office? And the result was pretty clear and actually is supported by other studies as well. About 80% of the employees think that the 2 to 3 days in a home office or remote office situation would be ideal to them. There is a very small number, less than 10%, who don't want to have any home office, and there is a similar small number which would like to work remote all the time. This is the requirement. The requirement, we got into the topic a bit deeper, is not depending on age. The requirement is depending on your personal life situation. It's mostly those people which have small children at home, for example, that have a difficulty with working in a home office situation due to the fact that you need to separate yourself eventually from your 4 or 5 year old daughter, because otherwise this is going to end up in a mess. When we look at remote activities, one of the interesting issues is how do we create commitment and how do we build teams online. I've seen software companies which do everything online nowadays, but still the onboarding of the employees, still the gathering together is something that they do in physical presence, because this team building requires some behavioral activities which are easier to handle in comparison to doing these things online. By the way, I have one of my clients is a software company with about 400 employees. They all work remote. What they do is once a week they have lunch together, and they have it remote. So everybody's sitting at home in front of the computer, and they have food together and talk about whatever they want to talk. It's not a work-related situation. For the younger generation, this is the most normal thing in the world. I find it strange to have my lunch in front of a personal computer to share it with others, but yeah, luckily those things change. There are leadership challenges. Remote leadership is a topic that becomes increasingly important if you don't have face-to-face contact anymore, if you have difficulties to control people at work, for example. You need to find different ways how to organize these things. One of the conclusions is that you have to look at results, because attendance is not the criteria for performance. Question, has attendance ever been a criteria for performance? I'm not so sure. I spent time in the office not being productive at all in my life, and I spent time not in the office and I was productive, because we know from behavioral sciences, for example, that people tend to have the better ideas not at the workplace. Sometimes we have them when we go for running or whatever we do. So that's the question, but as a leader, obviously you need to change your habits. It's more of a steering function in comparison to a control function in the future that people will have. And the control function, if it still exists, will be on results. We have a lot of onboarding challenges. People which mostly work remote find it easier to leave an organization again, because there were no personal relations given eventually. And a topic that I find extremely interesting, and I don't have any solution to this remote tendency, is the fact that for many years we tried to reduce the separation of blue-collar manual workers and white-collar mental workers. And now all of a sudden in the industry, for example, we have the situation that people have the chance to work remote at home. But if you are a blue-collar worker and you handle a 15-ton plastic molding machine, this is not going to fit in your garage. I mean, you have to go to the workplace. So we create a new separation of the two different groups. I don't know if this is so attractive in the long run. I've seen companies in Austria, meanwhile, which are worried about the fact that every blue-collar worker, because of the remote tendency, now tries to get into an office job, because then I can stay at home as well. I don't need to commute anymore and so on. And then they reduce the remote possibilities for the white-collar workers. Is this the solution? I don't know. But obviously this remote tendency is something that came very, very quickly with COVID, and it's not gonna go by. We have to handle that. Today I'm here in a classroom with a few students. I appreciate the fact that you're physically here. And presumably with a lot of students I don't see, but you may see me. This is a different setting and we have to get used to that, and that's normal nowadays. So, and if I'm as a dinosaurus, I'm able, I can handle that as well, yep. The next thing is this question about which generation are we talking about. Everybody talks about generation Z. I would rather say we have this post-COVID generation Alpha that is now coming into the workplace. If you think about apprentices at the age of 15, 16, they have this situation. They are used to online media. That means substantial changes in the value system. What are the expectations of this generation? And I have to admit that this generation Alpha is not thoroughly investigated about, because if you ask people at the age of 10, 12, 14, 15, they may still change their mind, but there are some tendencies already to be found. One is the fact that everything and everyone has to be fair, transparent, and tolerant. This is an expectation they have. This is how they grew up. That's part of the value system. Think about the company you work with. Is everything fair, transparent, and tolerant in the system where you work or not? Or is there something to be changed eventually? Or maybe you don't meet the expectations? Work-life balance is a top priority. When choosing an employer, that's not a big change. That actually has been lasting for more than 10 years, I would say. More independence and self-fulfillment. There were less work-related priorities in this generation, but on the other hand, 2 out of 3 of this generation believe work pays off. So obviously this is a topic, performance pays off in life. So there is a performance-oriented generation coming up again. Good news for those who like performance, who are in an executive situation. And individualization is basically a key demand. We tend to individualize almost everything. American studies, and I'm always cautious when studies come from the US because they may not fit into our European cultural background, also talk about the generation snowflake. What are the top Gen Z priorities, for example? Have good friends, health, family, a satisfying job that is enjoyable, good partnerships, safe employers, financial independence, having fun in life. That all sounds very nice. Nobody talks about the salary. I don't trust these studies because I have been in consulting for so many years and I'm still doing some consulting in the HR field, and when I have the chance to meet HR professionals, they tell me that the salary matters. Students are interested in that. The Generation Z people don't only want to know about how much remote is included and what's the value system and are you sustainable and eco-friendly and whatever. They also want to know what's on my paycheck by the end of the month. So I'm not sure if this is really the truth, but at least this is what American studies tell, and I wanted to show you this as well. So if all this would be true, the salary thing would be out of discussion. I don't see that. Maybe I'm a dinosaurus and therefore I don't see it, but when I look at our young employees at the faculty, for example, they ask about what is the salary in comparison to the salary in the industry. Okay, we may offer different things in addition, and that might compensate, but at a certain point of time, it's not possible to compensate anymore with non-financial incentives. However, these current discussions all go on topics such as work-life balance, Gen-Z, then we have this LGBTQ discussion, everything is remote and virtual. Sustainability is a bit of a different topic, but on the marketing level, sustainability is more a brand. Would be something that goes much more deeper, but there are other specialists in that topic. These are all indicators of so-called megatrends. I believe they are far too short in short. They are already here. And the real question is, what is really coming up in the future? And let's look at the current situation. We all thought Europe is a safe place. Well, if you look at the political situation, we have learned to deal with uncertainty. The war is now in Europe again. For us in Austria, this is a frightening topic because the border is something like 550 kilometers away. And we didn't expect that we would have the situation again. Okay, you are in Portugal, you can say we are far away. Well, the distance is not so dramatic, I would say, if you look at the long-distance missile, for example. So obviously things have changed quite a lot. And we have to deal with this uncertainty. And for many, many years in the strategic discussions, we discussed about we have to deal with uncertainty, we have to deal with unplannable things. And what did we do in the companies? We made 3-year plans, 5-year strategic plans. We have an annual budget. What do you think happened in Austria with the annual budgets? When we had this, best is you have it in paper, because then you can put it into a bowl and throw it into a corner. That's it. No use of that anymore. Energy prices in Austria, electricity about 20 times more than before the political crisis. I'm not calling it a war, I call it a political crisis, but it is a war, to make it clear. So there is things going on that we cannot predict. What will change in the next 10 to 15 years? What are the megatrends? And when I come to these megatrends, I have to say that they are not invented by me. They are invented by professional researchers and large consulting companies such as the McKinsey Global Studies, for example. You can read all the material basically online. I will give you a reference list by the end of this presentation, and you can check into those things if you want, and you can draw your own conclusions. So these changes are pretty well investigated, and these uncertainty things that happen at the moment may postpone some developments by a few years or not, but these things will come. So this is pretty much out of discussion. The first thing is what happens socially and politically. I think you speak Spanish. I don't speak Spanish, but I know what this means. That's a picture I made when I was in Catalonia. Meanwhile, this is over, or at least not so much in the media anymore. But what is really changing? Well, first of all, we have an aging population. And we talk first about the social and political changes. We have an aging population, and I call it the rise of the Silver Ages. Not because I'm silver already, but we have demographical structures that pretty clearly say the reproduction rate in our society is below 2. That means more people retire and leave the workplace than people come into the job markets. Age and income levels correspond frequently. What does this mean? Most surveys show us that the purchasing power of the older generation is by far higher than the purchasing power of the younger generation. And all these seniority payment systems where you earn more money when you get older obviously support that idea. So the financial power is now with those in their 50s, 60s, 70s. The next thing is, how old is 50 or 60? One of my grandfathers was a mine worker, was in a coal mine. When he was 50, he was, I would say, almost dead physically. I mean, mentally not, but physically. Now the people in their 50s and 60s are definitely active people. They spend money, they have resources. They still have 20, 25, 30 years to go. Maybe not totally healthy, but at least they can do things. So these grey panthers, as we call them, they tend to be well educated. Think about you in 20 years or 25 years, or me in 5 years. They're well educated, they have enough time, they are rather critical, they tend to be a bit cynical, and they fight for their rights. You can't tell them you're old now, you have to shut up. They don't shut up. They have time and they can fight for whatever they want. So this is an interesting group. It's an interesting group as a potential customer, but it's also politically an interesting group. And you have to deal with those people because they will not say, I'm retired now and I don't vote anymore and I do what they tell me. No, they are not going to do that. The next is the topic that we have this new eco-drive on the one hand and this population growth on the other side. Everything nowadays needs to be sustainable and it needs to be environmentally friendly. What has changed is, in the past, this was a question of conviction. I'm convinced that everything has to be environmentally friendly. Nowadays, it's a business model. And things have to pay off, and people are willing to pay more money, for example, if everything is, or if something is environmentally friendly. But what we also see is we get control on the worldwide poverty and hunger. That sounds a bit cynical, but you will see the numbers in a minute. Definitely less and less people starve. And in the Western world, actually, for many people, jobs will be one source of income in the future, but not the only source. I already have students which tell me, I want to have a nice income due to my work that I do, but I have these rental apartments I rent out in addition, and there were this asset and this asset, so I can utilize money from different sources. So they are not so dependent on having a job anymore. I remember when I graduated in the 80s, I was happy that my parents could invest the money into my education. Then we had no money anymore. And my dad told me, from now on, it's your problem. And my only solution was working, because I did not have any assets. There was no rental house with 25 apartments or so available. That changes as well. Productivity and human effort are less and less connected with each other. What does this mean? This Tayloristic work approach is over. And if you work hard, this is nice on a farm, and then you can grow a couple of crops more. But generally speaking, we tend to automate those things. We tend to create productivity by use of machinery nowadays, and how hard you work is maybe not so important anymore. What does this mean in the long run? This is now a political topic, and don't want to go too far into that. But if the main productivity is coming from machinery, at some point of time we have to think about how we distribute this productivity increase to the population. Because if we do not distribute anything, how can we have the purchasing power? And people with no purchasing power are poison for a market economy, because they cannot spend the money anymore. Do we have a global shift of power? Well, if you look at the financial streams, and I'm not a specialist in finance, I think the truth is, and that's now one of the not so friendly things, we are not in the center of power anymore in Europe. The most important financial streams are now between the North American and the Chinese area, so to say. and Europe is in that respect a little bit left over. So that also might be a threat for future income of people. And the fact that the war is back in Europe, I already mentioned, that also could mean that there is a fight between democratic and authoritarian systems. We don't know yet. Just to show you a few numbers, on the left-hand side you see the number of people suffering hunger since 1990 till 2019. And what you see here clearly is this is constantly going down. It's still a number that is far too high, but it's getting down. So obviously we tend to be able to feed the growing worldwide population in a better way than in the past. Found this very surprising. On the other hand, if you look at population growth per continent, what do we see here? Well, very simple. Europe is shrinking, Asia is in a stagnation phase, Africa is growing. So if you need young people in the workforce and you need to attract them, you have to go to Africa, not to Europe, because we are dying out to a certain extent. North America is growing a little bit, but that's also to a certain degree due to migration tendencies, which are very serious in these countries as well. Mostly talking about the US, not so much Canada. So there is things going on. What happens in terms of technology? 3D printers are now very common. Everybody has access to one. I think in Lisbon there are easily 10 printing houses where you can, with a 3D printer, you can get printed whatever you need. If it's made of plastic, it's easy. If it's of metal, it's a little bit more difficult still. Digitalization comes to everything, to products, to public administration, to healthcare, all different kinds of topics. In Finland, meanwhile, if you have some health issue, the first thing you do is you go online and you talk to a doctor online. And then if they assess you in a way that they say you need physical visit, then you may get an appointment eventually, but they're lacking people so much that they have this online version as the first interaction. Think about digitalization in terms of public administration. I've been to Estonia. Estonia is a wonderful little country, and they had this interesting situation after they became independent. They had no public administration. The Russian system was dead, so there was nothing available. And what did the Prime Minister do? He called students from universities in and said, guys, you travel for the next 3 months and you find out how can public administration be organized. And so they traveled around the world, and all these young people came back and said, we have to do everything online. They are the first country that has basically everything in administration online. In Austria, we're not so well in that. We still have lots of people in administration which are more or less not knowing what a computer is. But generally speaking, we develop in this direction. Or think about your personal bank account. When do you see your banker? If you are not working in a bank, that would be different. I think I have seen my banker 3 years ago when he told me that I have to sign this data, whatever, agreement, disclosure of something. I don't even read so much. So digitalization is everywhere. By the way, may I ask you, who still watches ordinary TV at home? Really? Okay. This is surprising because this young lady is watching ordinary TV. Normally, it's only someone really old who shows up and says, I still watch TV. All the others do stream and Netflix and YouTube and whatever. So millions of options. So, okay, you're a perfect example that some people also watch TV. Automatization in the industry now going on for 30 years. There comes this artificial intelligence topic into it. And this AI is extremely important because this also leads to this idea of the Internet of Things. In the US, people nowadays buy a fridge, and whenever they take something out, they scan the product. This is automatically connected to their preferred supplier, and automatically it decides, hey, milk is out, we need to deliver some milk. So you always have the same stuff in your fridge. I don't know if I would like to have the same stuff in my fridge every day, but generally this is a way where Internet of Things happens to be. We get more and more environmentally friendly technologies. I don't want to take the topic of the automotive industry because this is an interesting topic that is confusing, and I don't know if due to EU regulations by 2035 there will be no diesel and benzene cars anymore. That should be, or could be eventually a problem, but in all other areas also we have these environmentally friendly technologies nowadays. We have a strong plastic industry in Austria. This is poison. Plastic is the general enemy for everyone, and if you have a plastic bag, you are more or less killing the planet at the moment. So, yeah, these things are changing. Drones will revolutionize the transport business. This is not a prediction, this is the truth. Amazon has ordered 5,000 drones now to test in a city in the US the drone delivery system. And they think in 5 years they need 500,000 drones. An Upper Austrian company is delivering a component for these drone systems, and they already start panicking because they have no clue where to get the 500,000 pieces. I mean, this is an interesting infrastructure question. What I hear from our logistics department is also that truck driver, for example, is something that will die out. Truck drivers will be eliminated by automated systems where the trucks go basically together. Everything needs to be smart. Everything has to be big data, whatever that is. But big suppliers such as Amazon, for example, can make a psychological profile of you after the first 10 or 15 purchases that is even more precise than eventually the psychological profile my wife has about me, which is a little bit interesting and surprising. And then we have many, many other things. Vertical gardening is very popular. Now we can also say to some extent there is greenwashing included. This is from 2017, so this is before COVID. And this is the time spent per day on the internet. Now you can think about yourself if you want. But if you look at how many hours people are spending on the internet on a daily basis, and that's before COVID, I would be sure that this has been increasing when we all have been online dramatically and we didn't go back totally. From Thailand with 9.5 hours, so these people are really very focused. We have countries like, which one do we have here? Spain, 5 hours and 20 minutes per day. Germany, 4 hours and 52 minutes, which is down here. So on the right-hand side, it's about 5 hours. It's okay, the fact that Ghana and Morocco are at 3 and 2 hours, that's another topic. But generally speaking, if we spend between 5 and 7 hours a day online, this is the main communication channel that we use. If I want to reach my students online, I send them a WhatsApp message, I get the response in 10 seconds. If I call one of my students, I'm happy if they take the phone off. If I send them an email 2 weeks later, they may respond, if they ever respond. Email is for the old ones. So this is changing our behavior, obviously. What is changing economically? Well, as already mentioned, individualization is the key to the customer nowadays. Customers think they can set up the product according to their requirements. It's a key cultural value that you have free choice in the Western world. We want to have individualized products and services. That's also possible with 3D printing, for example. A very successful story is, for example, about this knife here. Nothing very special, but you can choose from, I don't know, 100 different tribals you can have printed on the knife, and then all of a sudden it costs 70 euros instead of 20, and people order that because it's individualized. No, it's not individualized. You have a choice out of several, and that is called individualization. But this individualization tendency is extremely important. We have in Steyr, where I come from, the BMW diesel engine and now also electric engine production. BMW is a small brand. It's a premium brand, but it's a small brand. Currently, a customer can choose, if you take all the chassis, all the engines, and all the features you want to have in the car, you have about 1 million choices if you want to buy a BMW, if you take all the combinations into consideration. By the way, I would recommend not to freak out in that respect, because if you buy the light green BMW with the pink seats, you will not get it sold anymore afterwards, but that's another topic. But you can choose it. Shared economy. First thing I saw when I arrived here in Lisbon, I don't know how many, but you have plenty of these scooter providers that you can book online. That's a typical example of a booking system, but it's also generally the tendency in the shared economy thing. You don't need to buy things, you want to utilize them. You utilize the scooter instead of buying one, which is super, because I wouldn't want to carry the scooter from Austria to Portugal because it doesn't fit into my hand luggage. We have all kinds of exponential organizations. Airbnb is very successful. There is all the Ubers around and so on. That's also an idea of the generation that I don't need to own things, I just want to use them for a while, which is reasonable, which is also very economical and ecological together. Circular economy becomes a business model. 20 years ago, I worked with a friend of mine as a consultant who was taking care of the waste in Salzburg. So this was they emptied the garbage cans, basically. This was the lowest level social status job that you could have. And he was having this company with, I don't know, 100 blue-collar workers emptying all the things. Now, this company is amazingly rich. They divide the waste, they resell the waste for enormous prices, and they put things back into the circular economy. Meaning that what I've been throwing away today, like this bottle, might be part of my running shirt tomorrow, easily. And luckily, I don't know. But so circular economy is a real business model. And that means we have dramatic shifts in the economic demand. This dramatic shift in the economic demand does not necessarily correspond to the changes in power and political influence, which could create difficulties in the future. But if you're interested, we can discuss that a bit later. So the key question is, what are the changes at work? Now I have to speed up a little bit, sorry. I believe the upcoming 10 to 15 years will change the workplace more dramatically than the last 40 years. A study by Deloitte says in the next 10 years, an estimated 35% of all jobs in Europe and about 77% of all jobs in China will be disappearing. they don't exist anymore in the future. This is not shocking because they don't talk about how many new jobs will be coming up. The key question is everyone who is losing his or her job from the old ones capable to have one of the new jobs? Because obviously that requires different qualifications. So what are the trends and tendencies in terms of employment? Well, the first good news is potentially boring jobs, these routinized jobs at the machine where you put something in and put it away and so on, this will be disappearing in the next few years. Lucky us. Nobody wanted to do these jobs. Everybody was hating that. And we tried to press people with piecework, a bonus and all the kinds of things to do the jobs, but basically nobody was interested. The shift from the industry to service and social services will continue, also because more people get old, they need services. Qualification will become more and more important. That's the good news. The bad news is it doesn't last very long anymore. You have to relearn things every 5 or 10 years because technology is advancing so fastly. Full-time and presence as employment, the person being at the workplace for 40 hours will be, I would say, the minority in the future. The majority will work part-time and or partially remote. Global sourcing. We source everything globally. That even leads to the fact that, for example, in Germany, we are worried about the fact that aspirin, you know, the headache stuff that you can take, lasts for about 3 weeks. And if in the Suez Channel we have a problem, we are running out of aspirin. I mean, that's a bit strange, but that's the way it is with global sourcing. I believe that global sourcing will also apply to the job markets. The potential danger to employment is not business performance, it's the competition by artificial intelligence. AI will eliminate lots of jobs. There is a big international bank which tried to automate the invoicing for international business purposes when you have to give a loan, this accreditif, for example. In order to organize that, they had about 100 employees in the headquarters handling that. Then they didn't find people anymore who want to do the job. So they started a project with artificial intelligence, first with software and tried to improve it. 5 years later, what do you think, out of the 100 employees, how many have been left? 3. The ones who had to deal with what is not solvable. So the super professionals, so to say. All the others have been leaving. So this is changing. Okay, I skipped that one. So what are the long-term consequences? I strongly believe the long-term consequence is that if you look at this in terms of circles, in the middle we have all the jobs that are done by artificial intelligence, robots, and big data, the combination. Automatization in general, but we have to put all that together. There will be an inner circle of people which is super important, which are steering organizations, which are strategically thinking, which are doing everything that needs, I would say, creativity and innovation. And then there is an outer circle of people, things that nobody wants to automate because it doesn't pay off. So we will be ending up, on the one hand, with a group, this inner circle, I call these people the steering committee, and the best and smartest one in the long run on the job market will be in this inner circle. These people are value and commitment driven. They are networking, coordinating, they are very close to political and economic power. They may be steering the demand, consumption and distribution of information. They may have some control on what goes on in the world. It will be important to find and develop the bright talents. They will control market interactions. How do we collaborate and which kind of deals do we gonna make? and also the strategic planning, visions and everything will be among these people. People in the inner circle are those who are led normally by transformational leadership, by vision, by commitment, by all these things that we learn in all leadership trainings nowadays. You will lead them with feedback, coaching, teamwork, all these kinds of things. That's the one group. On the other hand, we have the outer circle. The outer circle are jobs that nobody wants to automate because it doesn't pay off. And think about software engineers. More than half of the worldwide software engineers are already on a free market nowadays. They sell hours to a company they don't know online, and then they do the software engineering from anywhere in the world for a customer, according to whatever the prerequisites are. They never get to know each other. They get hired. They have no job contract, nothing. And if tomorrow somebody else comes and says, I'm sitting in Vietnam and life is cheaper, I can do it for less money, another one gets the job. That's the way it is. Which is good for the rural areas because they develop, money comes in. So these outer circle people, I call them soldiers for hire, that might be a bit unfriendly. They have no fixed income, they have no precise planning of the future. They are for hire on demand. They have no inner commitment on the organization. They have a commitment on that project that needs to be fulfilled, that contract that needs to be signed, and the compensation they receive for that one. What the central values of these people might be, I don't know, maybe freedom, maybe just a consumption-oriented world. We have these worldwide nomads already. Just lately I've seen in a quite remote resort in the Philippines, they built a new remote work hub. All of a sudden they had 2,000 software engineers there. Cool, with parties on and everything, obviously, and the fastest internet you can imagine. That's the most important thing. And this was in the middle of nowhere. Only criteria is cost of living, and to meet similar people. So they will do smart work, they may do low-level work. The guy who is running around and is cleaning in the production hall will still be there. The guy will not be replaced by a robot because that's too expensive. So we will have a lot of changes in that respect, but it will be a transactional-based leadership. I want exactly this service from you, and that's the money you get. And then the game is over, and then we start to interact again and do a new transaction. Very market demand-related leadership. Switching costs are getting close to zero. I can easily replace someone. Think about the unions, think about the employee representatives. Their role will change because these people will not be employed. They will be freelancers on the market. And freelancers are free, as we all know. And also we will have a situation where there will be something like an instant and global market pricing for services. So it doesn't matter how high or low the income level in Portugal is in comparison to Austria, nobody cares because it's a worldwide thing. So you in Portugal cannot compete based on price, such as we, because there is lots of countries which are much, much cheaper. And once a country is developing some economic wealth, obviously salaries go up and then this is not working anymore. When we talk about independent work, we often see someone sitting next to the beach with a computer and say, oh, this is a cool life. Independent work can also be the other thing, being in construction as a helper. So independent work is nothing new. But for example, if you look at the data, about 20 to 30% of the working age population in the US and Europe is already engaged in independent work. I would predict this will double in the next 10 years. So only half of the working population, I would assume, will be in permanent employment relations, which is definitely raising interesting questions also to things like, for example, a social insurance system. Because how do they pay into a social insurance? How do they get the necessary funds for those things, and so on? Okay, so I think I have 1 hour, is that right? Yeah, okay, so we are pretty clear on the spot. The rest I can show you if you're interested. There are changes in respect to how do we staff people in the future, how will be retention done, and so on. But that's not the key thing. First of all, thank you very much for your attendance. I hope that also online, some people still are online and follow me. I think the most important thing in every lecture is the discussion. So if you have any questions, if you have any opinions, insights, or completely contradictory opinions, I'm also very pleased about that. Please feel free to share your ideas and we can discuss it. There's no need, there's an offer, nothing else. That's always the challenging thing in this new world, because when people are online, you don't know if there are questions. But at least I have a few colleagues who I'm very happy about who are physically here. At least they didn't fall asleep, so everything seems to be fine on a late evening session. These are the references, so if you're interested in that, what I really recommend is, generally speaking, okay, there is German quotes as well. I'm sorry for that, but I speak German. But if you're really interested in the topic, you can have a look at the OECD report, The Future of Work. Very interesting thing, but it is written like a document from the OECD is written. And if you want to have this all in a little bit of a lighter, easier package, not so heavy to digest, I can recommend the McKinsey report, The Future of Work After COVID-19, where also some of the statistics are coming out. And I think this is a very precise and clear idea. What I have to say, and that is not in the reports, the separation between the inner circle and this idea about this work on demand outer circle is something that I'm more or less developing myself. But if I look at how companies now already start to outsource certain services to individuals, which are one-man companies nowadays, I see this as a trend growing quite a lot. Companies tend strategically to go on the core competences, everything else we eliminate. Sometimes we eliminate by accident also the core competency, that's not so healthy. I would not give away, for example, the entire IT competency of a company to a foreigner, not having anything under control anymore. But that's another question. Generally, this tendency, I think, is pretty clear. And when I imagine what we accomplished with artificial intelligence and automatization in the last 10 years, and this all has been speeding up all the time, I think this is going to continue. Just as a last sentence, not too long ago, I was in a retail distribution center in Austria, which is for food like Hofer and Aldi, you may know these names, or Lidl. It's amazing, but this was a production hall or a distribution hall of something like 10,000 square meters. 5 people working there, 5. Everything else is done by robots. Don't think that your ravioli are picked by someone and put somewhere. This is all done by robots. This is totally automized. And the people who steer the system are 3 people sitting in a room like the one we are here, but only with 3 chairs. But they have not 1 screen, they have 10 screens. And I had the feeling they start a cruise missile quite soon. No, they're just organizing the internal logistics. That's the way it is. Okay. Thank you very much for your attendance. If there are no questions, I hope there was something reasonable in it. If not, I am sorry to disturb you, and I wish you a wonderful evening. Thank you.